Plus fort que les bombes, donc.
Louder Than
Joachim
Bombs,
Trier,
Joachim Trier, with Isabelle Huppert. In the press conference, Gabriel Byrne, you can see there in these pictures. Enjoy the press conference and see you later with everybody from Pixar and Disney. Inside Out.
Thank you very much. Could I ask you to take your seats, please? Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference for Louder Than Bombs, which is in competition at this year's 2015 Cannes Film Festival. I will introduce our guests, starting at the far end of the table with Thomas Robson. On this film, he's credited as the producer, but on other films, we've seen him as a director, actor, scriptwriter, and even composer. Next to him, in the role of Erin, actress Rachel Brosnahan. I think that one of the reasons, perhaps, that we feel such great chemistry between her and Gabriel Byrne is that they acted together in Treatment. We've also seen Rachel in Olive Kitteridge, Manhattan, The Blacklist, and I hope we haven't seen the last of her in House of Cards. Next to her, co-scriptwriter Eskil Vogt. He's co-scripted all three of director Joachim Trier's features, as well as the short Proctor. And Eskil also directed Blind, which won the Screenwriting Award at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival. Devin Druid in the role of Conrad. I'd call him a revelation, except that we've seen him playing Louis C.K.'s younger self on TV, and he also acted with Rachel on Olive Kitteridge. And perhaps with his name, he was predestined to play Conrad, a young man whose on-screen avatar is a sorcerer, Devin Druid. Gabriel Byrne plays Gene. He comes to acting by way of missing out on his calling as a priest and bullfighting. We've seen him recently on television on Vikings and in Treatment, of course, but he also played for the Coen brothers in Miller's Crossing. The Coen brothers, of course, are the co-presidents of this year's competition jury. Director and co-scriptwriter Joachim Trier. It's his second time in Cannes after 2011's Oslo, August 31st, which was also nominated for Best Foreign Film at the César. And this is a bit of trivia, but in a film that explores intergenerational male family ties, I could mention that 55 years ago, a film called The Hunt competed in Cannes. It was directed by Joachim's father.
Grandfather.
Yeah. Grandfather.
Doesn't matter.
And finally, and a woman who's at about starring in almost every movie at Cannes this year. She's in no less than 3 films, along with The Valley of Love and Asphalt. Among her innumerable achievements, which I will race over to save time, she's won at Cannes, of course, twice the Best Actress prize for La Pianiste and Violette Nozière. She's been nominated no less than 14 times for Caesars, which she won for La Cérémonie. And in 2009, the European Film Awards awarded her the Outstanding European Achievement in World Cinema. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
While you're catching your breath, I will start the press conference by asking Joachim and Eskil. The film has so many very rich veins, infidelity, grief, teenage, the difficulties of being a teenage, the difficulties of being a father. How did you juggle those veins? Was there one that was the starting point?
Did we juggle them? We're trying. No, I guess we're interested in human stories, first and foremost. We don't usually start out with a plot that we can kind of pitch in 2 lines. We spend a year brainstorming, discussing ideas that are sometimes of a visual nature, sometimes just about characters. And then we try to structure the story. I think we were interested in lack of a better term, in a polyphonic structure, which means, the different voices of the family creates one story, one through line, and trying to balance and see how, like in real life, children mirror their parents, siblings mirror each other, or differentiate themselves from each other. And I think those sort of central themes opened up the possibility of trying to do something which is cross-generational, I think we'd, in the past, done, Oslo, August 31st was very much one character. Also, some people have said a generational portrait. And in this one, I think it was interesting to explore multiple characters.
I think, we started with the idea of doing something with family, or that came quite early. And family is kind of a complex structure in so many ways. I think the polyphonic structure of it and the themes came out of really want to explore those unsaid, all that's unsaid in a family, all those different stories you have, because of course you have different generations and people who are very different places in life. So it needed that structure to hold all those themes, and I think the theme of grief helped us to give us a direction to explore those themes inside that family.
Thank you. We have a first question in the front row.
Yeah, Weinthal for Latin America. I have a question for Mr. Byrne. How are you doing, sir? Yeah, my question is for you. What were your expectations coming to Cannes? Do you think it was going to be louder than bombs? Have you visited the city before as a tourist?
Yeah, well, I've been here quite a few times with films in Cannes. And, well, everybody has their own opinion of what the festival is, but it's exciting to be here. And yes, I have been here as a tourist. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Towards the back on the left side, we have a question, sir.
Hi, Rodrigo Fonseca, TV Globo Brasil. A question to Joachim. I would like you to comment two aspects. The photos, who were shot then, if you could elaborate a little bit about the photos. And there is a delicious moment in the film where the kids watch the movie that Gabriel did with Shelley Long. Could you make a comment about that? That's a genius scene.
Gabriel is fantastic in that scene, isn't he? I think it's good. It was very generous of you to let us use it as well. I think the film plays a lot, you know, it circles around the idea of identity and memory and time. And it was just wonderful to see the history of the Jean character and that you lent a part of your real life. And Shelley Long accepted that as well, so we could use that in the film. I thought that was fantastic. What was your other question? Sorry, the first part. The photos, yeah. You know, the film is about human problems and identifiable problems, but on another level, we're also wanting to talk about how the concept of representation plays differently in today's society. You know, on one hand, you have Devin's character, Conrad, who has a different idea of self-representation online. And then you also have, in the same family, the Isabelle character, who in many ways are inspired by many fantastic and very you know, very ambitious conflict photographers that we've either met or studied. We use pictures, for example, from a fantastic French photographer called Alexandra Boulin, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago from cancer. This is not at all her story, but her pictures were very inspiring in their way of portraying war, but playing upon absence rather than showing the grotesquerie or the directness that we are overwhelmed with in the media at the moment. Her indirectness creates images that I find very strong. They leave place for imagination, and that's inspiring too, also as a filmmaker.
Madame Huppert, we just used the word absence, and your character, of course, is absent in the present. The character you play has died. We see you in dreams. We see you in flashbacks. And yet, you infuse every frame of the film. You're present constantly. How do you act that presence? How do you have that aura that affects the entire film?
Je parle en français?
I think that the main trait of this character is that she's multiple. She is played out by different people. Sometimes she is a mother, sometimes she's absent, sometimes she's very depressive, sometimes she's strong-willed.
Ce que conforme au souvenir que
In fact, she is viewed in the light of the different memories of each member of her family. In a single person, there may be several different people. In one life, there may be several different lives. You don't show it that often in a film, yet it's self-evident. Within a given group of people, one person may be seen in one way by one individual and in a different way by someone else. She's incomprehensible even for herself. That is why she finally disappears and dies. She witnesses the harshness of the world that she is taking pictures of. She asks herself more and more questions about the life she leads. And then there is a rupture, a split. It's as though she was living a dual existence, a double life, and it becomes too tough.
And of course, Isabelle's as well, are facing the conflict between art and life, being an artist. And is this something that you draw on in your personal life? Have you faced similar choices? Et Madame Huppert, je ne sais pas si la question s'adresse à vous aussi.
Elle s'adresse à tout le monde.
I think that for many people in the modern age, there is a conflict between home and the workplace, and with it the attendant feelings of guilt and later regret. I think that it's something that many parents and children can identify with. But I think that in terms of the film, that's just one vein of exploration. For the family who's left behind after a tragedy like this, how one puts together one's life after that is a very complex journey. All the people in the film are dealing with grief of some sort. And I think apart from the theme of grief, the film is also an examination of family and what it means to be a father, to be a son, to be a wife, to be a husband. It also deals with the passage of time, I think. And in that scene that you referred to, I think anybody who's had the experience of looking at themselves on video, a family video, and you look and you say, oh my God, look how I looked then many, many years ago. It's a disconcerting kind of feeling. And one of the things that I think the film plays into is the notion of memory. How do you remember things? And each of the people in this movie are flawed, but they're also heroic in the best sense of the word. So it's not so much about the job that he does or that she does. It's about how your inner life, the complexity of the inner life, deals with the dilemma of workplace and the home.
Madame Huppert, est-ce que vous vouliez ajouter quelque chose?
Non, je peux confirmer, oui, je crois
I confirm what was just said.
Un film qui s'adresse
The film
à tout le monde, puisque ça
addresses everybody.
la difficulté
It shows how hard it is
du regard extérieur qu'on pose sur soi et puis
to put up with the way some people may view you. Life is tough. Sometimes work is a shelter, a refuge. Sometimes there is a degree of hostility that one sees in the film. She finds it very difficult to cope with the changes in pace. The pace at work is not the same pace as when back home. And that creates all sorts of inconsistencies in her life. Things are dissonant. Hence the title, Louder Than Bombs. Within the family circle, which should be a virtuous circle, things are totally dissonant.
We have a question at the back on the left side.
Yes, hello. I have a question for Joachim Trier. Are you inspired by Bo Widerberg's work, the director?
Bo Widerberg?
Yes.
It's interesting. Thanks for that question. I don't know if he's ever been sort of the main reference for anything I've done, and maybe I don't have a main reference anyway, because I'm a bit of a film fan and watch a lot of movies. Bo Widerberg did Love 65, which I thought was a fantastic kind of take on 8½, done in Sweden, with some actors from America that came from the John Cassavetes movies, if I remember correctly. That was a very, very honest, personal type of filmmaking that I've always responded to. I think it's, Widerberg is someone who, how should I put it? He did smaller and bigger movies. He kept the big machine close to the skin, which I think is inspiring. His point of view was very specific. So, yeah, he was a master.
Thomas, could I ask you, this is film, a European production in America. I don't know how one could otherwise, often we see European directors co-opted with often unfortunate results. That's obviously not the case here. How did you put this together, and how does this film differ in terms of production?
Well, it started with Joachim getting lots of scripts already after Reprise. With offers to make American films, and he read lots of scripts, and he didn't especially like, or at least he didn't feel that those scripts were right for him to do. So then Eskil and Joachim started writing their own American film. But then the financing was hard, and it was hard to do it only in the US. So at one point, the company that I just started in a year ago, but they started long before me, to try to finance it more as a European film. After some false starts and some years and a film in between, which was Oslo, August 31st, we finally made it last year with the help of French co-producers, Danish co-producers, and some great American partners. And I think I've signed contracts. If you print them, I think it's like this. I hope I know everything I signed, but here we are. We have the film, and it's a film. It's a very European film. Joachim has final cut, and we managed to collaborate across the ocean, and it's great. And me and Joachim have still not argued once. So I guess we're ready for another film.
Let's have an argument.
Maybe
there's still time.
Joachim, what was for you exotic? This is such a native portrait of America, but what was exotic for you in the material or the settings that you were dealing with, the characters?
I don't know. I think, again, going back to being a film fan and growing up watching a lot of American movies that were great at portraying real life. That's, I remember when I grew up, everyone's parents got divorced, and suddenly came Kramer versus Kramer, or Ordinary People, or years later when I was a teenager, suddenly we saw a movie like The Breakfast Club that felt relevant to our life. And that part of American cinema as well was something that I think both Eskil and I have always responded to. A lot of that has emigrated to wonderful TV shows. And when we then thought, we're interested in the big screen, we're interested in the space of cinema, let's try to kidnap those types of stories back and see if we can find a shape, a form, a way of telling it that on the big screen, but still trying to sustain a bit of that tradition. I don't work from a basis of genre, really. We always think that cinema should be as free as possible, as associative as possible, as, have the same possibilities as a novel, to move in time, to be about different characters, rather than to obey certain dramaturgical rules at the moment that I think seem to be imposed upon us. I would like to add as well that I think New York is a fantastic city, and we did a lot of exploration. Eskil and myself sat as anthropologists in corners of high school classrooms and observed the kids, and actually discovered that there were there were modes of representation in America that we don't see so often in American movies either, that we could, you know, try to put into our movie. I think the poetry of cinema, if I may be a bit pretentious, often comes from the specific or the naturalist details of things, the discoveries, rather than to always know and have a clear idea what you want. It's nice to be able to travel, discover, seek something.
Thank you. We have a question in the back again. Yes.
Hello. Jack Milvan from The Times. This is a question for Gabriel, because your character in the film that way, either in a game or in social media?
I don't think so. I think that, just speaking from my own experience, I think the job of parenting, there's no rule book. You try, you make mistakes, you take decisions out of a desire to connect and out of love. But the job of the teenager is to remove himself from the influence of the father. And that can be very difficult for fathers. If you've had a child who's utterly dependent on you and is now expressing freedom emotionally and intellectually, it can be very difficult to some parents, and I think I've done this myself, where you try to connect through commonality. And you try to connect through video games or things like that. That can be a mistake. And there's a wonderful moment, I think, when Devin's character responds by telling my character to leave the room, shut up, fuck off, get out. I think every teenager has a skull and crossbones on their door, don't they? Not every teenager. Devin is the one exception in the world. And that's kind of true. He is, really. And, yeah, so trying to connect and trying to be a teenager when you're not a teenager is seen as a form of condescension, I think. And teenagers automatically, resist that. The function of the parent is also to move away. The Buddhists have a great expression, which is that a child's first step is a step away from you. So you're always in the process of letting go. And in this particular relationship, Gene finds it almost impossible to let go, both of his wife and his kids.
In the back, please.
Hi, me again, Rodrigo. To the director again. Among several touching aspects of the film, the relationship between the brothers is especially moving. I would like to know, how did you prepare Jesse and Devin to they connect, to perform that strong approach of the brothers? Could you tell a few words about the way you prepare them too?
Yeah, well, I think they're just really good. They act, so we believe them. No, but I was very fortunate that all the actors took time aside and we had rehearsals. We met, we discussed characters, and we got to know each other a bit before we went on set, which I think is very valuable. So Devin and Jesse got to hang out and create their own dynamic, and I think that's something that shows in the film, to have a bit of patience. A lot of movies are just done bang, 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 and actors often are forced to go from one shoot straight into another, and I'm very fortunate that we had some time in between to get to know each other and find ways of individually structuring the relationship of the actor and the character in each case.
Thank you. Question over here on the left side, the right side.
I have a question for Isabelle Huppert. What was it like working with Joachim Trier? How do you view him as a director? I discovered his films with Oslo, August 31st. It's an extraordinary film. We met together at the Stockholm Festival. We continued to see each other on occasion and to write to each other. And I was very pleased when he asked me to be part of this film. For him, I think it's a new experience. We shot it in New York. It's a film that's European, but it was shot in the States with American actors, Gabriel, Jesse. And I believe that this was a very different experience for each of us. For the American actors, because they were shooting with a Norwegian director. For me, I wasn't acting in my country, and it was an enriching experience. It was a first-time experience for most of us. The film is international in the best sense of the word. Joachim wants the film to be really artistic, to shoot it in the States, and he wanted to bring together all these different actors and actresses. We all felt we were in the right place.
Comment je vois sa culture? Ah, son futur. Ah, je le vois.
How do I view his future? I think he has the makings of a very great career. He's a wonderful director, as he's already proved 3 times over.
Devin, it's striking in the film how our perception of your character changes. How do you act that?
I think it's very important to remember that he's still a kid, and to just really to embody the emotion of what has happened to him. Because the great thing about it is that you get to view the film through several different perspectives as well, because you're not necessarily acting in different perspectives, but you get to see it. So as there are various parts where we see through Gene's perspective that maybe he's just this, bratty kid that's doing weird things, but then you get to see his perspective, and there's a reason for everything. There's a much deeper meaning towards everything that he's doing. And I think the best way to just do that is to really delve deep into the emotion and the mindset of this character. And it's a lot easier when we had such a great group of people, great director, different people, incredible actors that I could easily bounce off of that were just incredible. It was a fun time.
Rachel, I guess it's everyone's fantasy to sleep with their therapist. And here you get to. Were you drawing on, did you and Gabriel have a history, a rapport that you drew on? And as follow-up to that, a very different question is, I was really surprised by how shocked I was by what happens to you in the film, by the act of violence. And was it as difficult for you to play that scene as it was for us to watch it?
Well, I think perhaps, Jesse and I are the ones who have the relationship in the film. Aaron and Jesse.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just go along with this. I'll come up with a whole new storyline.
We CGI animated some extra sequence that I forgot to tell you. I'm sorry.
I haven't actually seen the film yet, so suddenly I was like, oh. No, so Aaron and Jesse have had this, or Jesse's character have had this relationship in the past. And, I think through these small sequences with them, it enhances these themes that you're already looking at in the film. You're looking at 2 grieving people who have come together with this familiarity that for a moment lets them both escape. And I think that's something you see throughout. Memories of each other, memories of different people. Aaron and Isabelle's character had met once briefly, and they connect for a second about it, but the whole thing is under this false pretense. He's lied to Aaron about why he was in the hospital when they ran into each other, and I think you just get to drop in on this lovely moment that talks about all these wonderful themes that are present in the film.
That scene brings up the question of humor in the film, and perhaps even inappropriate humor, joking about cancer, the big C.
Yeah.
How important was the humor in the script?
Is that to you or to?
Is that
To you.
to
all of you?
You take it.
Yeah, well, life consists of mixed feelings, you know. I think it would be hard to make even a quite melancholic film like this without any humor. Even in the darkest of moments, there is hope and there's humor. You know, that's how it is. I don't know, Eskil, you're the funny guy. What's your perspective on it?
Is that your doing?
Someone saw the film and said it was melancholic. I never heard that before.
Really?
Well, I think we love films, Joachim and I, but sometimes, like Joachim said earlier, they tend to try to be, have to enter in very, very specific molds. And sometimes if you do something about grief, you have to be serious all the time. And we felt, well, life is not like that. People make jokes even when they're depressed. People have moments of levity. That's what shows the complexity of people and characters and their relations, and that's where people reveal themselves. So we feel it's important to have that aspect, even though it's a melancholic film.
There are, excuse the word, Freudian elements in the film, perhaps edible elements. Devlin, your character kills his father. You and your brother both sleep with mother figures. Is this present as myth or is this psychology?
Yeah. You want me to? I mean,
free associate.
Yeah, well, yes, you're onto something. But I don't know. I guess when we work together, I think we try to find truth in the characters based on motivation, situation. And just as a person in real life might act from impulses that aren't clear to them, it's not always the case that we, sit down and read Lacan together and talk about, the perspective of mother, father as symbolic entities, and But no, I don't want to say too much about it. Sure, but we talk about family. We talk about ties that both need, where there's need for love and there's need for ties to be broken. It's complicated stuff, and you just don't have to just be into sort of a psychoanalytical school of thought for that to be a relevant theme, I believe.
Thank you.
I think one of the things, if I may just say that, one of the wonderful things about working with Devin was how instinctively open he is as an actor. It's hard to believe that, this is his first film. And he had such a wonderful accessibility to him that it was like working with somebody who had done 50 or 60 movies. No kind of tricks or techniques or anything. He was absolutely there emotionally in each scene. And if Joachim would say, well, try it a different way, he was ready and willing and able to do that. And I think he understood his character at a very profound level because you can't act Freudian. You know what I mean? You pretend as an actor. You pretend life. And can I just say that working with Joachim was an incredible experience because he is such a sympathetic director. Myself and Rachel were talking about this earlier on. A lot of directors don't understand what actors do. And sometimes they over-direct them. And they say things like, well, could you be happy but a little bit sad? And could you be tall and short at the same time? And then throw it all away. And you think, fucking hell, what's he talking about? And then there's directors who don't direct at all. But Joachim directs in the way that is so caring and not just of the actor, but of the character. And that's a wonderful thing to be exposed to. And acting with Isabelle Huppert, for me, was the culmination, if I may say so, of a lifelong ambition to work with her, because somebody said to me once, who's your favorite actress? And that's who I said was my favorite actress.
Sir, in the front.
Yes, I have another question for Mr. Byrne. What was it like growing up as a child with your own father, your own relationship with your father, as the first of 6 children. And Devin, what is your relationship like with your father in real life?
I don't know. It's mostly been just my mom and I, but I'm very, very lucky that she is such a strong and capable woman, and she's kind of taken on this dual identity. Forgive me if I start to water. This is kind of, my mom is just incredible, and she's kind of delved into both the mother and father figure in my life. She's always been there for me and incredibly supportive with everything I do. Especially something like this, because most of my work is up in New York City, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and so this is like we have constant 6-hour drives up to New York City at least once, twice a month, and she's ready, geared up every single time, not complaining about a single thing. She just wants to help me and my younger brother reach our dreams of what we just really love to do, and I don't know how she does it. You're a superhero. You're super mom. I love you.
Well, my father came from the generation of men whose definition of masculinity was silence. You did not express your deep emotional feelings. It was not in the culture. And so therefore, one grew up as a father trying to guess the identity of your own son, and as a son trying to identify who your father actually was. What I do know is that I never listened to my father when I was growing up, but since he died, I can't stop listening to him.
Questions? Joachim, one that I'm surprised hasn't come up. Could you and Eskil tell us about the title?
Well, some people have mentioned that, yes, there is a Smiths album. There's also a sentence from an Elizabeth Smart poem called By Grand Central Station, I Sat Down and Wept. And Eskil, we were discussing this as we were approaching now the premiere of the film, and we can't quite remember actually how we came up with it or why, or discovered it rather. Huh? But I think there's something about the incomparability of the big tragedies of the world and the smaller tragedies at home, and the incomparability of those things that somehow resonates in that title. And I guess personally, I don't know how you feel, but I think it's a title that asks questions rather than to label something, which I guess is in the ethos of how we like to work.
I think that's when we know we have a title that we like, when it evokes different things in us, and it doesn't have just that one interpretation, but it has several strong interpretations. And just last night, there was a journalist again who talked to me about the film, and he said, for me, it's about the silence between people in a family sometimes, and that silence can be so loud. And I felt that was a beautiful interpretation of the title as well.
I'm afraid our time's up. Thank you so much for the film. Thank you for coming to talk to us.